Let's have a look now at Egypt, because that's where Jacob's family went down and became slaves, and Joseph was the first hero of the Hebrews in Egypt.
Here is where we find the statue of Pharaoh Zoser, under whom Imhotep served. It was on the base of this statue of Zoser that Imhotep was mentioned as a man, not as a god. He was first after the king, with his cartouche shown here. At the complex of buildings, the main hall is of importance to us. It was here and in other locations in Egypt that Joseph saved his country from famine. In Joseph's day, as one entered the building, they would make their way down this hallway to purchase grain. There would be many cashiers available for customers of various languages to trade for the much-needed food. The famine was all over the face of the earth, and Joseph opened all the storehouses and sold to the Egyptians. As we exit the hallway through the area in the rear, we see over on one side a series of deep structures where grain was stored underground during the 7 years of plenty. Then over the next 7 years, it was sold to the Egyptians and visitors from other countries.
And so these Mesopotamians took with them their ability to work with stone, and they built those great silos with Joseph there, for example. And also they were building pyramids in Egypt, and they built great pyramids while they were there in that period between 1900 and 1450 BC.
Allowed to construct one of these machines on a pyramid, he demonstrated to the head of the Department of Antiquities in Cairo, Nasif Mohammed Hassan, its operation. Mr. Hassan then showed Ron some pieces of wood they had stored, which they had believed were parts of a boat. But when they tried to assemble them, they couldn't. So they simply placed them in storage. As they examined these pieces, they now knew what they were.
And so these Sumerians, that is the children of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the Israelites, were living as slaves in Egypt, in that Nile Delta region in northern Egypt, during the golden age of the Egyptian Empire. And they brought with them their agricultural techniques and also their livestock from Mesopotamia, and also their ability to build boats and to fish and to be good stonemasons, and also to read and write. And in particular, they had a book called the Book of Yesha, which means the Book of the Righteous, which records the history of Noah and Abraham and the children of Israel while they were in northern Egypt. And this book was found in a tomb in Thebes, and it was taken back to America, and it was translated by the Latter-day Saints. And it's interesting that this Book of Yesha is actually referred to in the Old Testament in the books of Joshua and also Samuel, not the Book of Genesis, just this Book of Yesha. And so I actually believe that the Book of Genesis is a much later compilation of the earlier books of Enoch, Yesha, and also Jubilees. And in particular, in the Book of Yesha, the history of the Israelites while they're captive in Egypt is provided. And for example, it says that the Pharaoh was reasonably good to the Israelites after the 7 years of famine and the 7 years of plenty that Joseph was involved in. But after Joseph's death, the Israelites became very vulnerable, not only to the Egyptians, but also to the Edomites. And the Edomites wanted to wipe the Israelites off the face of the earth. And so they came against them in Egypt. And this is the battle against the Hyksos that the Egyptians record. And they record the Hyksos as being the sons of Seth, or the Canaanites. And so we know that these were the Edomites, and led by a man called Zepho, who was Esau's grandson. And the Israelites got up and won that battle against the Edomites. And the Egyptians actually abandoned the battle and deserted them. And on the way home, the Israelites, who won the battle against the Hyksos, then turned on the Egyptians. And this is when the events of the book of Exodus began to take place. And Pharaoh's daughter went down to the Nile and found Moses among the bulrushes and took him back to her household and named him after her father, who would have been Ahmose. And he lived until around about 1525 BC, although some people think it was longer. And that was exactly 80 years before Moses crossed the Red Sea in 1446. And we know this, remember, from the Book of Kings, the first book of Kings, chapter 6, verse 1, where it says that Solomon's temple was built 480 years after the coming out of Egypt by the Israelites. And so that year was 966 BC. And so we have this chronology which goes right back and which ties up with Egyptian chronology. And not only did they bring with them their agricultural techniques and their stonemasonry techniques, but they also brought with them the religions of Canaan. And of course, we know what we saw in Sodom, for example, with those statues and also the pyramids. And the same things were being built down in Egypt. And we also have other archaeological evidence in the form of the El Amarna tablets, and they are dated to the year 1380 BC, which means they confirm the Old Testament. And this would have been the time that Joshua was clearing out the land and making way for the Israelites to occupy the land of Canaan. And so according to conventional Egyptian chronology, the pharaoh at that time in 1380 BC would have been Amenhotep III, who was part of the same dynasty as Ahmose and Thutmose. And so let's have a look at those pharaohs, and we'll have a look at Wikipedia, for example, to see what they say about them very quickly. And in particular, I want to look at their mummies so we can have a look to see what they really looked like. And so here we have Ahmose I, who was a boy when he became a pharaoh. And then he was superseded by Amenhotep I. Then there's Thutmose I, who would have lived in the same house as Moses in the Pharaoh's household, who's the son of Ahmose. And then there's Thutmose II, and both of these pharaohs have these elongated skulls. And then there's Hatshepsut, who was a female pharaoh, and she was the mother of Thutmose III, and it was Thutmose III who saw his chariots go into the Red Sea and be covered over by the waters. Here we have Amenhotep II, and he's not such a good-looking fella either. And have a look at him. He's quite a strange fellow, isn't he? He looks like a part reptile. But he's superseded by another Thutmose. And we have a look again, and we see another Amenhotep. And this is the pharaoh that was there when those tablets were written. And now we get on to the Tutankhamun pharaohs, who are part of the same dynasty. And some of them look quite alien as well. Have a look at the shape of their heads. And so that's Tutankhamun and what he looks like.
Y unos se corren. Y juntos.
Ladies and gentlemen, people of Russia, today we stand on the precipice of a monumental revelation, a moment that redefines not only our understanding of history, but also the path forward for our great nation. In an extraordinary discovery hidden beneath centuries of lore and legend, we have opened what can only be described as the oldest vault known to mankind. What we found within its ancient confines challenges the very fabric of our beliefs and heralds a new dawn for our country. Within this vault, we discovered figures of biblical proportions, characters that many have read about, debated, and revered. These figures, preserved against the sands of time, reveal a truth that is as profound as it is transformative. They are all black. This revelation, this undeniable truth, stands before us not as a contradiction to our faith, but as a testament to the diversity and unity that faith embodies. As your president, I see this moment not as a challenge to our beliefs, but as an opportunity to embrace a wider, more inclusive understanding of our history and spirituality. Russia, in its rich tapestry of cultures, traditions, and peoples, is uniquely positioned to lead the world into this new era of understanding and acceptance. From this day forward, let us proclaim our nation under the guidance of Black Jesus, a figure who represents not just the cornerstone of Christian faith, but also a symbol of the universal values of love, compassion, and brotherhood. This Black Jesus, whose likeness and history have been unveiled from the oldest vault, is a message to us all that divinity knows no color, that spiritual truth transcends race, and that our common humanity binds us more tightly than our differences divide us. Let this discovery remind us that history is not just the story of those who wield power, but also of those whose contributions have been overlooked or forgotten. It challenges us to re-examine what we know, to question our assumptions, and to open our hearts to the broader possibilities of understanding and faith. As we embark on this